Imagine trying to measure the distance between two cities. On a flat map, Euclidean distance works beautifully. Draw a straight line, measure its length, and you're done. Now imagine the same calculation, not in 2 dimensions, but in 1,000,000 dimensions, then 1 billion, then inside the trillion-parameter language models powering AI in 2026. Something completely unexpected happens. Distances begin to lose their meaning. Points that should be close become almost as far apart as points on the opposite side of the space. This is known as the Curse of Dimensionality. As dimensions increase, the difference between the nearest neighbor and the farthest neighbor becomes surprisingly small. Everything begins to look equally distant. And modern transformers introduce another challenge. During training, vectors constantly change their magnitude. Layer normalization, optimization, residual connections, and scaling continuously stretch and shrink their lengths. Two vectors may represent exactly the same concept, yet one may be 10 times longer than the other. If we rely on Euclidean distance, they appear very different, even though their meaning is identical. So magnitude slowly becomes noise. The only property that survives training consistently is direction, not how long the arrow is, but where it points. Modern AI therefore abandons the flat geometry we learned in school. Instead, embeddings are projected onto the surface of a hypersphere, where every vector has exactly the same length. From this moment onward, similarity is no longer measured by distance. It is measured by angle, and that simple idea changes everything. In the previous scene, we discovered something strange. Distance stopped being trustworthy. Magnitude became noise, and only direction survived. But if distance is no longer the answer, a deeper question emerges. How do we measure similarity when every vector lives on the surface of a hypersphere? Imagine 3 arrows. One points toward cat, another points toward kitten, and a third points toward galaxy. Their lengths are identical. Their positions are different. What matters now is not how far apart they are. What matters is where they point. Cat and kitten point in nearly the same direction. Cat and galaxy do not. Suddenly, meaning becomes geometry. Semantics become angles. And this leads to one of the most important ideas in modern AI. Two vectors are similar when the angle between them is small, not because they are nearby, not because they are large, but because they are aligned. The mathematical tool that measures this alignment is called cosine similarity. It asks a beautifully simple question. How much are two vectors pointing in the same direction? If the vectors point exactly together, the cosine is 1. If they are unrelated, the cosine is 0. If they point in opposite directions, the cosine becomes -1. Notice what just happened. We completely ignored magnitude. A tiny vector and a giant vector can now be recognized as expressing the same idea if their directions match. This is the secret behind modern embeddings. Language models don't search for nearby words. They search for aligned meanings. And hidden inside cosine similarity lies a familiar operation, the same operation powering attention itself, the dot product. The dot product looks deceptively simple. Multiply corresponding numbers, add the results, produce a single value. But that formula is hiding something extraordinary. Beneath the algebra lives a geometric measurement, a measurement of agreement. Imagine 2 arrows floating in space. The dot product is asking a surprisingly intelligent question. How much does one arrow point in the same direction as the other? To see this, imagine shining a flashlight. The shadow cast onto a wall reveals how much of the light is pointing toward that surface. The dot product works the same way. Take one vector and project it onto another. When the vectors align, the projection becomes large. When they separate, the projection shrinks. At 90 degrees, the projection vanishes entirely. This is the first secret of the dot product. It is not measuring distance. It is measuring directional agreement. Now let's look at every possible dot product at once. Imagine a landscape where height represents agreement, peaks correspond to alignment, valleys correspond to disagreement. As two vectors rotate toward each other, they climb the mountains of alignment. As they diverge, they descend into valleys. This is exactly what modern attention mechanisms are searching for. Not nearby words, not large vectors, alignment. And after normalization, something beautiful happens. Every vector has the same length. The dot product becomes almost entirely about angle, and angle becomes meaning. The dot product solved one problem. It gave transformers a way to measure alignment. But as researchers increased model size, a new problem emerged, a problem hidden inside dimensionality itself. The more dimensions a vector contains, the larger its dot products naturally become, not because the vectors are more meaningful, not because they are more aligned, simply because more numbers are being added together. At first, the effect seems harmless. 4 dimensions become 64. 64 become 512, then thousands. But hidden beneath the surface, the variance of the dot product keeps growing, and eventually the numbers become dangerously large. Then attention passes those numbers into Softmax, and that's where everything begins to break. When scores are small, Softmax distributes attention smoothly. Multiple tokens can contribute. Information flows freely. But when scores become enormous, Softmax becomes overconfident. One token wins everything. The others effectively disappear. Attention becomes brittle. Learning slows. Gradients vanish. The model loses its ability to reason across multiple possibilities. The solution was remarkably elegant. Divide every dot product by the square root of d sub k. This scaling doesn't change which token is most important. It only prevents the scores from exploding. A tiny denominator, a massive consequence. One of the simplest ideas in deep learning helped make modern transformers possible. Today, we discovered how transformers decide what deserves attention. We started with geometry, traveled through dot products, learned why scaling is necessary, and finally watched attention emerge from Softmax. But a deeper mystery still remains. Once attention has been computed, how does information actually flow through a transformer? Which directions become stronger? Which directions disappear? And how can we mathematically track the movement of information through billions of parameters? To answer those questions, we need one of the most powerful tools in mathematics and deep learning. A tool that measures how every output changes when every input moves. The Jacobian matrix. The Jacobian reveals the hidden flow of information inside neural networks. It helps us understand sensitivity, attention dynamics, stability, optimization, and even why some models learn while others fail. In the next video, we'll build the Jacobian from first principles, visualize it in 3 dimensions, and discover why it has become one of the most important concepts in modern AI research. Until then, keep curious, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.